went over their own experience, and yours may be different from mine. I'm afraid I gave you a little autobiography, which I apologise for, but just to explain how you come to the view that you hold, and other people with their experience were different than the people here served in the war and so on, as well as I did, and their experiences probably much more gallant, because I never killed anyone, thank God. I was a bit too young. But we've got to find a way of reassuring people. And what can we honestly say now that would be reassuring? Well, one thing is absolutely clear. Every government in the world is frightened of terrorists. The Russians have had this battle in Chechnya, which they describe as terrorist. The Chinese are fighting the Falun Gong. I don't know if they call them terrorists, but it wouldn't surprise me if they did. So you get the Chinese and the Russians, the Americans, as governments sitting down and saying, now, what do we do? At the same time, you've got to tap the wisdom of the world by calling a General Assembly where people come along and say, what about the Palestinians? We haven't got a state. We've nowhere to live. Or looking at the Iraqis come and say, we've lost 600,000 people in the last 10 years by bombing and the sanctions. We bombed Iraq last week, killed 8 civilians again. That doesn't appear in the papers anymore, not interesting enough. And then you look at Iran. Well, when the Iran-Iraq war was going on, the Americans funded Saddam Hussein. I spent 3 hours with Saddam Hussein in 1989. I went to persuade him to release the hostages who were released and then get out of Kuwait. He said to me, even if I leave Kuwait, I'll be destroyed by the Americans. I'm too strong. Very clever man, a wicked man, but very clever man. I thought he was a soldier. Actually, he was a lawyer. And I had about 3 hours with him. He had a revolver in his belt, and at one stage he took it out, and I thought I'd gone too far. He put it on the sofa, and we got into a more discussion. But everyone said to me, when you see him, say what you really think, because no one there will have the guts to do it, and you're a visitor. And so all these people, Tariq Aziz and Ahmad, are all sitting there, and I was able to say it in a very respectful way. But of course, until a week before they went into Kuwait, we were arming Saddam Hussein. And so the thing is really very, very troubled. And that's why I do think the General Assembly of the United Nations called together would mean the United States had to face the fact that they may be a superpower, but you cannot actually control the world from the Pentagon. You can't do it. I mean, we tried as an empire and were very successful. The danger is that America is a wounded superpower, and a wounded lion is very, very dangerous. And I don't say this in any hostility to the United States, because I'd feel the same if I'd lost my family in the World Trade Center. But you could see this happening. I could also see a lot of sort of repressive measures at home. The internet will be checked, and mobile phones will be banned, and if you support, I don't know, George Galloway will be arrested and all that. I can see all sorts of problems. And in the labour movement particularly, we have to try and act in a reassuring way. I don't know, maybe if there is a further military action, they'll cancel the Labour Party conference. I wouldn't be a bit surprised. And no one, it's so important not to frighten people with the language of the left. I went to the Marxism conference last summer, and one lovely lad, I've known for years, said, we're all victims of capitalism and we must smash the state. And I said, well, as a member of Parliament, if an old lady comes to me and says, Tony, I need a bungalow, and I say, you are a victim of capitalism. Smash the state. She said, well, that's very, very interesting, Tony, but what about the prospect of a bungalow? And you have to address people through their own experience and just lecturing them. There's no use. And people want peace now. You've got to address them. How do you get peace? What do you do? What could be done? How do you restore hope? And I was a bit nervous of the debate because the whole thing was sort of whipping us up again in the way I remember the Suez and all the rest of it against all the colonial leaders. I'm saying that, I'm not endorsing what happened because it was horrific. But at the same time, you don't make it better by doing it yourself. So those are my opening thoughts. I don't know if it's of interest to you, but I'd be really grateful if you would contribute. Because I don't think most people in Britain are just waiting for a war. My impression from the people who come up the street and the people of Britain in the last few days is that actually people desperately want to see some light at the end of the tunnel, and that light is not to be caused by nuclear explosion. There was a newspaper in America this morning called for nuclear strikes. And God knows what would happen if that was done. I don't think it will be. But you can wreak enough bloodshed without nuclear weapons. So, is that a reassuring start on a Sunday morning? Thank you very much for inviting me anyway. I really appreciate it.
Tony, on the brilliant, that, thank you. It's really best Sunday morning I've had here for a long time. It's superb. Education. We are the third from the bottom, United Kingdom, in adult basic skills, and the skills base of our nation is constantly undermined. It's very difficult for working class people to get into higher education now. You've either got to be very wealthy or very poor to get in, and yet Mr Tony's government is saying that they want 1 in every 2 young people into higher education within the next 5 years. Now, the fact that the working class has now not got access to the higher end of further and higher education, the fact that the underpinning language of our class now is perhaps the non-reflective language of the Murdoch press. A working class conversation in a pub is basically reportage on what's passed in front of the people's eyes in the Sun newspaper or on the media, on the TV, the short attention span media that day. How from your vast experience, how can Ruskin, what can we do to change the political climate to once again widen participation of the working classes into further and higher education in order that people can learn the reflective skills, can expand the language, can adopt the formal language which empowers to change? What can we do to change the profile of working class participation in education?
Well, I mean, the trade union movement always recognised the importance of education, always has done. The miners had their college at Clown and Ruskin and Northern College. My wife, really, she should be here answering the question because she devoted her life to the promotion of comprehensive education. And her belief was that every child was entitled to go to a school where they had opportunities to study the full range of knowledge. She did not believe in selection, and neither do I. I think selection is a way, as you say, of taking the bright and mixing them with the rich, so the bright make the rich look respectable and the poor can be left out on the grounds that they're ignorant. And the more I hear the debate on education, the more I feel that there is a deep hostility in the establishment to the education of the working class. And the sink schools are just what they want, because they drain off, cream off the so-called bright kids, specially gifted children. I mentioned to somebody a moment ago, when I was in Moscow, I had a long talk to the Soviet Minister of Education, Strokin, and I asked him about the schools for specially gifted children. He said, well, actually, there are schools for the children of specially gifted parents. If you were friendly in the Soviet Union, they'd tell you a lot more than if you shouted at them. I got on very well listening to their problems. And now you see the madness within a week of people throwing a pipe bomb at the children in Belfast who were going to a camp. We announced more church schools and Muslim schools. No, I'm not against Muslims, but do you really want people to be trained in schools where they're indoctrinated with their own religion, or their own Protestant or Catholic or Muslim or Jew? You want that at a moment when we're all going to have to live together. My grandchildren in a little primary school in North London called Thornbury Primary. There are 77 nationalities there. And many of them are refugees. They've actually got a refugee centre in the school. And my grandchildren are going to grow up, and already are growing up, to be citizens of the world. And that's what we've got to do. Caroline used to say, all religions should be taught in all schools. And that's right, we should know about Islam and Judaism and Hinduism and Christianity and its various varieties if we're going to do it. And so the whole educational policy at the moment seems to be directed to create an elite who could take over the world and the rest to be trained to obey and not to think. Now, if you put it like that, it does put a slightly different slant on it from Chris Woodhead's view, going around naming and shaming. I'll tell you a funny thing. My brother, a very bright lad, sent me an article in The Economist for 1848 about the slave trade. And it said, you know how serious The Economist is, very, very brave. It said that the slave trade is absolutely essential. There are all these ignorant blacks in Africa, and they're needed on the plantations. You can't abolish the slave trade, said The Economist. You should regulate it. And I thought of Chris Woodhead being in charge of off-slave. Naming and saving those slave ships where the cemetery arrangements fell below. And, you know, this is where a little bit of history helps, because I'm not an academic historian, but what I have learned in life, if you want to make sense of what you're doing, excavate the ground under which you stand and study. If you're a fitter, or an electrician or carpenter, excavate the ground. And if you do, you'll understand it. So it's of fundamental importance, and I wish the trade union movement played a much stronger role in demanding comprehensive education throughout life, funding of adult education and access courses, dropping the tuition fees, which are an absolute outrage. Everybody leaving university now will owe £12,500. They meet another student there with £12,000. They marry. They want a mortgage at £40,000. They start life with £60,000 debt, and that's not an accident. Because if you're in debt, you do what you're told by your employer. And I can imagine circumstances where if I went to the hospital and said I've got a pain in my leg, we said we cut it off, we'll give you a loan. We'll give you a loan, and you can pay it back. It's total erosion of the welfare state. I'm sorry, it was a long answer, but that's what I meant to be talking about in the first place. So.
I'd just like to change the subject slightly. I heard you on election night, and you were asked why the electors of Chesterfield voted Lib Dem, and you said they were faced with a new party. I wonder if you'd like to explain what you mean by the new party, and more importantly, where you see Mr. Tony has taken Labour. Has he taken it along the model of a Thatcherite system, or does he genuinely believe that he's a socialist, but some sort of socialist that I don't think anyone in this room's heard of?
Well, I don't believe in fighting political arguments personally. You know, I think that's we had spent years attacking Thatcher, and she disappeared and nothing changed. I did once draft a bill called the Mrs. Thatcher Global Repeal Bill. It was one called bill, and it said everything passed since 1979 is hereby repealed. And you realise even if it was passed, Thatcher's influence was still there. So let's not make it personal. But there's no doubt whatever that what's called the New Labour project, as we know from Ashdown's diaries, was to merge with the Liberal Party. So while we were fighting Liberals in Chesterfield, as you know, they won the seat, they were our main opponents. While we were doing that, our leader was negotiating with Ashdown to merge the two parties. And then the Prime Minister said, a New Labour is a new political party. He said it himself, wasn't me. And he's right, and I'm not a member of it. I saw him the other day. You know, we get called in once a year to the back bench and sit in the cabinet room. And I did say, Tony, you made the same mistake as Arthur Scargill. I said, what do you mean? So I said, well, you both set up new parties. I said, what's wrong with the Labour Party? And he gave me a funny look. But the fact is, it is a new political party. And the third way is really just a way of describing a continuation of neoliberalism and so on in the guise of Labour. Now, I can well understand, after years in opposition, why everybody in the trade unions wanted to win in '97. Mind you, we won for a funny reason. The people voted Labour because they wanted to change. The establishment supported New Labour because they didn't want to change. They thought this is the best way of carrying on, that a strong Labour leader with the United Party was better able to do what they wanted than John Major, who was seen as a weak leader of a divided party. And we are now in a situation where there's a huge majority, and why don't we do it? You know, we were told for years, all very well, Tony, but you know, you can't get ahead of the public. And yet, for the first time in my life, the public are to the left of the Labour Party. That's unbelievable. Everybody wants the railway